Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to September's next webinar presented by UserWay. We are really excited to have Lionel Wahlberger here and Jeremy Bandler from UserWay. I'll introduce Lionel in a second. My name is Lisa Friedlander. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer over here at Next, powered by Shulman Rogers. Next is an innovative and award-winning model for the delivery of legal services to startup and emerging growth companies. And our monthly partner webinars are just one way to provide educational services and value add to our community. And today is no different. We have a phenomenal topic on digital inclusion brought to you by UserWay. These are things that startups need to know about web accessibility, compliance, and usability from day one. We are never too early to be focusing on these things, and they are often forgotten. We're honored to have Lionel Wahlberger here, the Chief Compliance and Operating Officer from UserWay. Lionel has spent his career understanding the nuanced role that technology plays in global advancement. As UserWay's COO, he connects their suite of AI-powered accessibility solutions with enterprises, governments, and agencies. Lionel is also a member of the W3C standards body, where he advocates for the disability community. So we have a real expert here in a lot of ways. Lionel has agreed to keep today sort of free-flowing.
Do we need to do some?
To keep today free-flowing and informal. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to interrupt Lionel, raise your hand, put your questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring them as well. We'll, of course, leave questions at the end if you prefer to do that too. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Lionel Wahlberger. Lionel, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to your colleague, Jeremy, for helping to facilitate UserWay's presentation.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here. And I understand we have from now till the hour. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I have a presentation for about 40 minutes of that because I look forward to good Q&A. And let's jump in. I have some slides to guide the conversation. So I'm going to share screen and dig in. So the title is, as Lisa said, Digital Accessibility. It's never too early. What startups need to know about web accessibility, compliance, and usability from day one. My name is Lionel Wahlberger. Thank you for the introduction, Lisa. Lisa mentioned that I also contribute to a body called the W3C, and I just happened to be there physically. This is my lanyard. It's our annual meeting. This might be the standards body that is the most influential on people's lives that you've never heard of. You might have heard of the World Wide Web. Well, this is where it's standardized. And so it's a very special day, and it's my pleasure to talk. I could talk about these topics all day. I'm very passionate about them. There are two topics, startups and accessibility, two of my favorites. So let's just start. We're mentioning the word accessibility. How do you think about accessibility? Most of us think a medical condition. You know, you see somebody in a wheelchair and you think they might need treatment. You might see people who are disabled because they're disadvantaged. You might associate them with groups that need charity. You might think of them as a social group, like you see a cluster of deaf people who are signing to each other. You go, oh, that's a certain social group. It's not my group. Maybe if you're a startup, you're thinking of it as biohacking. You know, people with a different kind of leg prosthetic can run faster than people with their biological legs. But what I want to suggest to you is a very simple and different way to think about it. As I told you, I'm at a meeting in Spain. And when I went out after the meeting to go to the restaurant, I would ask people directions and they didn't understand me. Because in Spain, they do not speak English generally. So I'm an individual, same one, Lionel. I have a task. I want to find the restaurant. When I do that at home, I find it in a minute. But here my environment has changed. And so now I am disabled. I would urge you to think of it this way, because not only does that remove you from these other ways of thought of medical charity or assistance, but it moves you as an entrepreneur or startup founder to the realm of activity and scope and impact. People are doing tasks. That's probably why you have a startup. You've thought of a different task or a more efficient environment. And so you might think of disability this way because that will bring you to the mindset that I'm going to advocate for this hour, that including disability is a win-win everywhere around. So when should you start thinking about accessibility? Now, as I said, I'm very sympathetic to the startup framework. I've had 5 startups. This is my 5th, and we have gone public. We're listed on the stock exchange. So when should you start? At the pre-seed stage, when you're in your ideas, Series A or above, on product launch, or 1,000 users? And what I'm going to tell you is now, just now. Whatever phase you're at now, and for all the reasons that I just mentioned. So to make this more concrete, because a startup entrepreneur is a very busy person, and they have a million tasks to do. And I don't want to add one more task. I want to broaden and simplify with a slightly different way of thinking. So let's start with target customer. You have a startup idea. You're picturing the end user. Maybe it's a procurement officer in a company. You're imagining some kind of person who's 40 years old, male or female. Or perhaps your startup is about fitness and you're picturing a person working out and they're maybe younger, in their 30s. Whatever it is, you're picturing a target customer. Really, you want to reach everyone. And you might not be defining exactly, as I just did, the demographic, but whatever way you think about it, I'm going to urge that you give it a plus. I'll tell you what I mean. It's very simple. You have your target customer in mind. Maybe it's just everyone. Maybe it's a particular age group. But now you think, what about that age group? Plus, they only have one arm that they can use. Can they use my product? I'm picturing that age group. I've developed this system that I have, this application, this platform, whatever your startup idea is, and that person is low vision. They just can't see very well. Can they use my product? That's the idea behind the Your Persona Plus. And that's the way that you can start right now. And to go back for a minute to individual task and environment, when I'm on the bus, for example, on a train or on an airplane, I can't let the sound go on my phone. So I'm an individual. I want to look at your startup. Perhaps I want to use your product. But maybe it makes sounds, or maybe it's important how it looks on the screen of my smartphone, and I'm in bright light and I can't see the screen. You probably think of those things as annoyances or environmental shifts that a person can fix. But I hope at the end of this hour with me, you will actually think of it as a temporary disability, a situational disability. Because I'm urging you, the more you let this word disability into your life, the more you will increase the audience for your startup, increase your impact, increase your value. Now, just to give a lesson, Meta did a product launch called Threads, and they got a lot of publicity because it did not prioritize accessibility. Now, we would all wish to have the kind of publicity that Meta got on their launch for our startup, but this shows you that accessibility is on people's minds. So now is the time to think about it. Let's go back now and think deep in our understanding of who exactly is it for. Accessibility benefits your end users. The classic story is what's called the curb cut. This is a sidewalk curb that I'm showing on the screen. And then there's a section where the curb meets the road, and that's called a curb cut. Curbs 50 years ago did not have curb cuts. They are only there because a small population needed it. People in wheelchairs. They could not get up the curbs. This is a pattern in accessibility where a small population needs a solution. They advocate for it. They are awarded it. Today, every sidewalk has a curb cut. And then what happens? It benefits everyone. And on the left, I'm showing a bicycle going up one of these curb cuts. Bicycles, strollers, skateboards, scooters. Scooters weren't even around 5 years ago, and now they benefit. So when you think accessibility, when you will very often be focusing on disability, like, for example, my procurement officer who has very low vision. They'll have to zoom everything up. We know Zoom. It's when you make things larger on the screen. What I'm saying is that rather than think of that narrow group, you can understand that what you've done to serve a relatively smaller group's need, you've ended up creating a convenience for a huge group. Accessibility benefits everyone in that way. And that's why an accessible experience is a better experience. Now, we are talking about disability. I've been urging you to just think of it as a mismatch in task, but I would not have done my job if I didn't just focus on the categories. So there's visual disabilities, which is blind, low vision, or colorblind. There's speech disabilities, it includes people who are not able to speak. There are hearing disabilities, which include deaf and the hard of hearing. There are motor disabilities, which include people who are not able to use a mouse, and cognitive disabilities, including dyslexia and epilepsy. Once again, to put a fine point in it, I'm going to work my way backward and reiterate how these affect all of us. Cognitive disability, you wake up with a terrible migraine, you need to make an appointment, you have very limited cognitive function. You are a person with a cognitive disability in that case. A motor disability, sure, you have two hands, but you've broken your arm. It's in a sling. You've sprained your wrist. Now you only have one arm. Or you're holding a baby. You're holding a package, and you need to operate this new great startup thing with one hand. Can you do it? That's motor disability. Hearing, as I already mentioned, when I'm on the airplane, I can't play my phone out loud. If I've forgotten my headphones, I'm done. I'm not going to play audio. I am, for the purposes of this conversation, situationally deaf. Speech, people cannot speak. In a loud space, I cannot speak. I'm in a quiet room here to have this Zoom meeting. If there was a tremendous amount of noise here, you would not hear my speech. I would be situationally disabled. And finally, visually. By the way, Lisa, I do see a bubble on the chat, but because the presentation is full screen, I don't see the chat. So perhaps you'll help me know if someone's asking a question. I am happy to stop at any point. I do like a give and take with the audience.
Awesome. Thank you, Lionel. No questions yet, just some introductions, but yes, everyone, please feel free to chime in. Thank you, Lionel.
Now, again, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about assistive technology. One of the privileges of working in UserWay for myself is that I have a team of people with disabilities who really require the use of assistive technology. So one of the most prevalent ones is called a screen reader. We have a person on our staff, he's actually the head of our accessibility department, and he's blind. He navigates everything by listening. He has it's called a screen reader. There are other types of assistive technologies called Braille devices. There are switches. Of course, a world famous example is Stephen Hawking. He would move his eyes, and by moving his eyes, he could type on a keyboard. All of these are called assistive technologies. And again, I'd like to emphasize, I have a nephew who is trying to pass an IT exam, and he's autistic, and he has tremendous difficulty reading. So he turned on a screen reader to read the book as he read it. And we call that multimodal. Who here, when you're watching a television show like on Netflix or Hulu, who leaves the captions on while the show is running? I do, all the time. Why? Multimodal. You hear it, but you also read it, and you consume it better. That's what it means to think about accessibility. Multimodal. Get your messages coming from all sides. You're a startup. You want traction. You want buzz. These things that I'm advocating will accelerate and deepen your success. These types of disabilities require unique solutions. Just to give you a sense of the amount of people we're talking about, 43 million people are estimated to be blind. 50 million are epileptic, so things that flash are not good for them. It could trigger them. Dyslexia is a huge amount of the population. 15 billion people, 1.5 billion people worldwide are deaf or have hearing loss. 15% of the population have mobility impairments. Color blindness, 350 million people. That means that, you have this great startup, you have this great screen, and you just, you want to go, red means not good, green means good. Well, colorblind person, they might both look like the same color. That's a kind of disability that if you follow what I'm going to tell you, you'll be able to communicate with those colorblind people as well. Situational disabilities, like I mentioned. Overall, it's an astonishing 1 out of 4 people. And that's according to the United States health statistics and global United Nations statistics. 1 out of 4 people. So accessibility in the end benefits your company. 71% of people with disabilities will abandon an inaccessible website. Most will leave within 6 seconds. You want to include everyone. And if you're not built for accessibility, you will be excluding some of your potential audience. Some more statistics on this. 17.1 billion pounds in lost online sales because disabled people abandon the website. You know how annoying a checkout form can be sometimes, right? You type your name, your address, you click enter, and then you have to type your name, and then credit card's denied, you go back, you get a different credit card. While that can be a chore for a person with a normal range of ability, that can be a complete showstopper for somebody with a cognitive disability. Just having the page come up again can enter them into a state of rage and confusion. And we all know that situation. You ever look around for your keys or your phone? I know I left it here. I know I left it here. And somehow you just can't find it. And then you do find it. It's because your short-term memory actually gets impaired by certain emotional feelings that you have and the hormones that flow in your body. So inaccessible websites, difficult to use forms, have an economic cost. Now, I've talked about the problem set, and I'm going to show you solutions that UserWay offers, which are some of the finest in the world. But I'm here to really drive home the general point, and I'm going to be able to do that by showing you the products that UserWay offers. So I'm going to show you some of these products to deepen this message of what is inaccessibility, what simple steps you can take with UserWay. And then I'm going to end with just 5 takeaways in general, not connected to my company in specific, because the message here is accessibility. So UserWay is your digital accessibility compliance platform. We enable equal access to online experiences on millions of websites and documents and assets. We're powered by AI, automation, and of course, people. We make it easy for teams to prioritize accessibility from design to deployment. So if your startup has a website, we have solutions to achieve the goals I'm talking about. Your documents, as I'm going to make a point, have to be accessible. PDF documents are not accessible the way they are natively. You need to make sure they are. And apps, of course, should be able to be used by a screen reader. We're number 1 in global market share. We have over 1 million websites using and trust 70 billion loads of our product. We're a full services digital accessibility solutions provider. We're recognized by Gartner, and we have all these medals from various ratings companies on our success. We're number 1 in market share, according to the Wappalizer analysis, above any other provider. I mentioned before Raghavendra. Here's a photo of him. You wouldn't know of he is our Chief Accessibility Officer. But you probably do not have an accessibility officer. Most companies don't. And that's why you'll want a solutions provider. And that's why I hope you've come here for us to tell you about it as subject matter experts. So let me now review why it's important, and then I'm going to give you a demo. Number 1, there are issues of compliance. It's a law. As your startup achieves success, as you have users, you are required not to discriminate against those users. The United States Americans for Disabilities Act stipulates that you cannot discriminate on the basis of ability. In the United Kingdom, there's the Equality Act. In Canada, there's the Ontario Disabilities Act. In the EU, there's the European Accessibility Act. These are laws. And you might wake up one day, if you don't do the things I'm recommending, to a lawsuit. These lawsuits generally settle, but we're talking about 4 to 5 figures. Sometimes for a large organization, 6 figures. In order to assess compliance in this setting, they use the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, sometimes shortened to WCAG. I'll get back to that in a minute. Number 2, accessibility has been linked to increased performance metrics. You want to perform. You want a good high click rate. You don't want bounce. You want increase in your EPC and increase in your EPV. And all of these are driven and are associated with companies that have accessibility. These figures are from Natural Intelligence, which makes technological platforms. And they implemented the widget and tracked these figures, and they saw this 2.4% increase in revenue per click, 3.5% increase in revenue per visit, and 1% in click-through rate. So it is, as I've said, good all around and good for performance. Accessibility means access, the ability to access every user. That's kind of flipping the story around, but you want to access your users. 25% of Americans with disabilities are still in an under-recognized market sector with $500 billion in disposable income. 1 in 4 adults in the United States lives with a disclosed disability. As I mentioned, WCAG is the international standard for website accessibility. I'll spend a moment on it. It's a standard. It has about 50 success criteria, hundreds of checkpoints, and they divide it into 4 principles. The first is perceivable. Whatever your information is, whatever your content is, can it be perceived by somebody who literally cannot see, a blind person? Is it operable? You have a button to click, you have a slider to slide, you have whatever actions are done, can they be operated by somebody who has one hand or somebody whose hand shakes? Is it understandable? Understandable meaning it's related to perceivable, but understandable is the semantics. Is it semantic? That's a key word, and maybe I'll spend a minute now focusing on what that means. When you read a book, there's a standard layout where a bigger text means the title. I'm saying things that are so obvious, but I'm just making it very clear. And then you might have a lot of white space and there's a line, and that's a chapter heading. Those are different semantically. When you have, you pick up a book and it says, recipes, that's not just a random word. That word is the title of the book. That's a semantic issue. It means that that word refers to the meaning of the entire book. Later on, there'll be a recipe, how to make salsa. That's a heading for what comes underneath it. Semantics, if your materials for your company are semantically labeled, then they will interoperate and be rendered in all these different ways. The screen reader will know the word at the top isn't just the word in capital letters, recipes, it's the title. And the screen reader will say, title, recipe. When it gets to the heading, how to make, let's say, salsa, if you simply made the letters bigger on the page, which happens, it has no semantics. The screen reader doesn't know that those are significant words. It's when you semantically mark it up as a heading that the screen reader can say, heading. I'm going to show you a little more about semantics. And finally, robust means that it can work in all different settings. The differences when you're in this compliance space are surprising. Before you, I have the same exact design. They look almost identical, but the gray text color is not compliant on one of these examples. So don't guess, use the right tool. So you're head of your company, or you're helping make things go, and your developers, your designers come up with one of these. How do you know which one's accessible? Can you guess which one's more or less over here? I'll give you one moment while I take my drink of water. Okay, right hand, hold up right for the one on the right, hold up left for the one on the left, and here comes the answer. Who guessed right? It's very subtle. It's insanely subtle. To make the point, I'm going to show you how to measure it, okay? And you, just stay with me because this is really simple. I'm just going to take an eyedropper. Where was that slide? I'm going to take an eyedropper and I'm going to measure the accessibility right in front of your eyes. Okay, so here are the two, right and left. I have here a color picker. Color Picker is a simple app that you can run on your Windows or Macintosh. Take the color picker. Now let's pick a letter, the same letter on both sides. So here's the letter A. See that? And I just click right in the middle there. Now this scientifically is the letter, the color number 787878. See that? You don't have to know why it's 78, it just is. Let's now look at the A on the right. This one is 737373. You go to a tool, UserWay's tool is great. It's called the color contrast checker. Here it is, 737373. I just plug it in here, foreground color, and I have passed WCAG. What was the other one? 7A. I kind of forgot what it was. Was it 7? I'll do
Yeah, 7, 8, 7 either.
It's 7, 8, right? Thank you.
Yeah, 7, 8.
7, 8, 7, 8. Fail. Just like that. Why? Because they had to define some moment where things get hard to read. Look, you will, if I go to 999999, you'll see things get very hard to read. See? If we go even higher, for you computer geeks, DD is even higher. See, that's hard to read, right? This fails for good reasons. Whereas the most clear would be 00000. So this is now clear to read. So going back, the difference is quite subtle, and that's why it is a specialty. And you, as the head of your startup, as the head of your company, you're not going to know the difference. That's not your job. You need tools and you need to request it. That's all. That is your job. And if I had to stop right here, if you have to get off this recording now, I would just say, whoever you're working with, say, is it accessible? I want it to be accessible because I want to reach everybody. Is your code accessible? Make it accessible. All right. So I told you I would demonstrate our tools for getting things there. And so let's spend about 5 or 10 minutes on that. So we have solutions for every step of the digital accessibility journey. We call it a journey because when you even think of your startup, let's take another example. There's a group of startups I was very interested in, which were laundry startups, where they put lockers by train stations. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's for young people who are more mobile. They don't have washing machines at home. So when you go to this locker, you have to be able to put your laundry in and then collect it and get messages on your phone. So from the very beginning, when you're thinking about it, you have a locker. Can you open the locker with one hand? You know, whoever you're inviting it from, did you require that? That's called the design phase. Then there's the development phase. There's some kind of app. Did you ask your software developers to make the software accessible? Then there's the optimization phase. Now you're doing advertising. Is your social campaign accessible? That's why we call it a journey. And that's why at the very beginning, I said, when is the time? Now, because you're always doing something. We have a wide variety of software and services for every need along the path. So we have an accessibility widget, which again, I keep underlining. I want you to come away with things you can do right after this call. So UserWay has an accessibility widget. Even if you take none of our other services, you can just put that on your site and immediately get greater access, greater uptake, and send the message that you understand something about accessibility. We do audits. We have a scanner, fix my code. We help you digital documents, and we have managed. I'm going to show you 4 of these products. So let me start with the widget. The widget, I'm moving in my browser to here. This is a website, and I already had the widget open, so I'm going to close it. Now, this is just a website. It's a website that we made to demonstrate things, and I can be searching for shirts. It just looks like a e-commerce idea. This round universal symbol for accessibility means there's a widget on the site. A widget is a very welcome addition for offering choices, personalization. I'm having trouble reading this now. I flip the contrast. Now I can read it even in bright light. I'm having trouble finding the links. Where are links on this page? Let's just highlight all the links. There they are. There are the links. I'm having trouble knowing where my cursor is. I just can't see it. Well, let's make the cursor bigger. So this is a large cursor. This is a reading mask, something very helpful for people who have dyslexia or ADHD, can help them focus on where they're reading. You're offering your visitors so many choices, and then they associate that with your product and your company, and they feel, this company understands me. They're looking out for me. Now, I mentioned before semantics. I told you I'd return to that because it's an important part of what we're talking about. Here's page structure. Now, screen reader users routinely navigate by the semantics of a page. Sighted people never do. But let me put a finer point on that. Sighted people do it just by glancing. You glance at this page and you know, shirts, oh yeah, then you go down here, clothing. You are navigating by semantics without even thinking about it. But the blind person doesn't see this word all alone up here, doesn't see these words over here. They would ask their screen reader, can you tell me the headings on this page? And then the heading navigator would say shirts. There are categories, and there's a heading 5. The page also has landmarks. There's a banner, there's a form. These are things that your developers will just do as long as you ask them. Make sure they're accessible. Write it in your contract if you're hiring somebody externally. If it's someone native to your startup team, say, hey, are we accessible? And then finally, blind people do link navigation, which sighted people don't do. And it's really useful. These are just all the links on the page. That could be really useful when you're digging for something. I had to do early check-in on a new airline. I could not find the early check-in. You know, I'm searching around and it's telling me these new trips to Rome and it's telling me how I can upgrade, and I couldn't find it. Semantic navigation would have let me navigate to the link. That is just the front window of the widget. Now I'm going to log into the widget and show you even more. So if you want to make sure that you're accessible, you put UserWay's automated AI-powered accessibility, and it will remediate for you. So here I am viewing remediations. Now, this is a robot that works on your behalf, and it will fix things for you. Remember I showed you this color contrast, things are very subtle. So this is the UserWay AI-powered service. It's looking at this item here and saying, oh, this T is not quite accessible. You need to change it to this. This you need to change to this. This you need to change to this. With color changes, we don't do them for you because color changes can often have been selected by your brand advisors. But you could just turn on automatically fix, and then all of them would be fixed. I'll show you one more example. Images need descriptive text because if a person isn't seeing the images on the page, then they wouldn't know what they are. So this says man's running t-shirt. See that? And the screen reader would read it like that. But with UserWay, if you wanted to change what it says, you could say men's running t-shirt, man wearing a watch. You could write whatever is important, whatever would be an alternative description of the image. And again, this is something that not just blind people enjoy, but everyone can enjoy it because your phone interprets this. If for some reason the image doesn't load, if you're in a train and you're going through a place without bandwidth, you would still get the alternative text and you'd know what it meant to communicate. Those are two examples. The widget is a tireless robot that works and makes sure your site's accessible. So it's a quick way for you to get on the accessibility journey. The next tool I want to show you very quickly is the scanner. So if you want to if you're further along, you already have an application, you're already in the market, you've spent time with me, and you're going, you know, I want some of that accessibility. I don't know my status, then you can scan your page. This is a scanner and it will read the website like a person. Then it gives you an accessibility score. This is a low score. It runs 793 tests, and then it tells you what's going on. So on this particular site, there are visible focuses missing. That's an important item for accessibility. And then we give you the issue. We tell you what exactly is wrong. We show you a screenshot of where it happened. So your development team can fix these things. The scanner, the widget, we fix it. And the scanner, you fix it if you wish. And if you need help fixing it, UserWay is a full services provider. Your coders can go to Fix My Code, and they can say, oh my gosh, I got this violation from the scanner that there's no focus indicator. So you can just say, you know, write my button with a visible focus indicator. If your developers aren't sure how to do it, they can go to Fix My Code, and Fix My Code will give you a WCAG compliant code. Here again, you see semantics at work. It says button. And when the device knows that this is a button in this example, see, if that was a button, that's not, this is just a phone number. But like here there's a button up here, start free trial. That's a button. So if it's labeled as a button, then a blind person, a person with assistive technology, and any person will know it's a button, and they will be able to reach it more quickly. So this is Fix My Code, another product from UserWay. In this part of the demonstration, I wanted to show my products from UserWay. So I showed you the widget, and I showed you the scanner. And we have other solutions. I want to point out that I've shown you automated and manual remediation. So I want to stress that UserWay meets you where you are. If you need automated remediation because your team can't do it, we'll do that for you. If you'd like our experts to do it, we'll do it as well. We have basically any solution. We do consulting, we do training, and we have fully managed digital accessibility. If you want to just give us the task, and we'll make it happen for you. Okay, I guess that is the most fun part for me, showing off my products, but I do want to give you just capabilities in this space.
Real quick, Lionel, before you move on, we have a question from Karen. Can the widget be applied to social media platforms as well, like Instagram or others?
Great question. So when people log into Instagram, they're on Instagram. So Instagram would have to put the widget. So for your social media posts, you just have to make sure that you do alternative text, okay? Because the accessibility is being handled by the platform. I just did a LinkedIn post yesterday, and my social media guy said, Lionel, you forgot the alternative text. It was actually, I posted this webinar that I'm doing it. And I said, I'm so excited. I'm going to be talking to next. And I put up a little picture, and he wrote back, you didn't put the alternative text. The alternative text is read by the online robots as well. So it gives you greater search results. So for social media, just make sure you write alternative text. All right, here's 5 simple things you can do. They're important. So color. I showed you colors. There is such a thing as an illegal color. So I know when you go out the gate with a startup, you very often just have a preliminary design. Logo, if you're like me, was made by your wife. I'm just, kidding, but it's made by a relative. You might not have hired the most famous designer in the world. Just tell your designer, check your colors if they're accessible. Don't give me this brand that's so fancy and has a very light taupe for the headings, and then no one can read it. The second thing you can do to make sure you're accessible, use alternative text. I already mentioned it. Alternative text describes intent. It should be present in all relevant images. It'd be so fun for me to find that post. I just paused the screen share here because I think I could find this in 1 minute. My LinkedIn post about this webinar. Yes, I did. I just found it. So I'm going to go back to it, and we're going to read my alternative text. Let's see if I did a good job. Okay, so this is LinkedIn. I wrote this post. Are you inclusive? Blah, 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 blah. And I put this image. And then Oshri said, finally didn't write alternative text. Now, where is it? You don't see it. So how does a screen reader read it? Well, we could put a screen reader on this and read it to us. I could do that. That would take me a moment. I'm going to do something very ultra geeky and inspect it. Don't be afraid. You will not be harmed. And look right here. See alt text. See that? Dr. Lionel Wahlberger standing in a suit next to the title of the digital accessibility webinar with UserWay's partner next, on which he's guest speaking. The text reads, next partner webinar, your startup success now accessible to all. This is alternative text. This is being read. So when you upload your LinkedIn, when you do your Instagram, you just put on an image. You take a moment, find where you click to do the alt text. It was very easy. It's very easy to find. And write a description of the image. Just takes an extra moment and it will get you more traction. Okay, the third thing that I recommend you do to be accessible is have descriptive links. How many times do you see click more, read more, click more, click more? And it works. For sighted people, it works. You know, here's my startup, here's my idea. Click read more, read more, read more. But read more, read more, read more. If somebody's zooming in, here's a surprise for you. It's a part of the law, part of the WCAG, that the site has to work at a zoom of 400%. Okay, that's a lot. So here's LinkedIn, and now I'm going to zoom in 400%. It's still readable. Isn't that amazing? And that's required. Now, all kinds of magic just happened. All this stuff disappeared. I mean, and if this will work for you as long as you tell your developers, make my code accessible. LinkedIn did their job. I could go to, I don't know, some random site. I mentioned CNN before. Let's see if they can survive a 400% zoom. So here we are. We have a page. If you're sighted, you're glancing at the headlines already, right? If you're using a screen reader, it'll say heading 1, escape, heading 2, Kim and Putin. That's how you navigate. But now let's go to the 400%. Hold on to your seats. See, 400. Still readable. Isn't that amazing? And we don't like to admit it. People getting to the age where you have to wear those glasses and you make everything a little bigger on your phone, right? Isn't it great that this is built in? And it will be built into your startup if you ask for it. If you don't ask, they might forget. And I can just hear them saying, 400%, isn't that a lot? That's the law. Okay, I mentioned that. And what number was I up to? Number 1, color. Number 2, images. Number 3, descriptive links. Number 4, your multimedia. Make sure you have captions. You will have an explainer video, right? Another kind of startup that I love is where they detect if you've fallen down for elderly people. My mom is 97 years old, so I'm interested in that technology. So they have an explainer video. Make sure you have captions. If you use YouTube, the YouTube robots will generate captions, but they'll make mistakes. You know, if you called your startup some word that's a new word, it might come out wrong. It's easy to fix it. Everyone uses captions. So this is another case where you help the disabled, you're helping everyone. And the 5th and last, and it's the most brainy, semantics. Semantics are the key to make sure your content reaches the widest audience. Ask your programmers to check it. The structure must be logical and not skip heading levels. So those are your 5 key points. We're UserWay. We have the solutions. We're here to help. And I'd love to take some questions.
Thank you so much, Lionel. Wow, I'm like blown away and want to go right away to the next website and the Shulman Rogers website and, you know, figure out. So I'll save my questions for the end, but would like to open it up If anybody has a follow-up question or concern for Lionel, either about the rules or how to go about it, or what about UserWay in specifically. So anybody have a question for Lionel? That just might mean, Lionel, you did such a great job on your presentation. So I love your response in terms of when. It's now. It's like wherever you are, it's now. That's what you should be doing. And I don't believe, paid attention to this, unfortunately and sadly, for us when we were building our website. But so now's the time. So how do folks get involved or with UserWay? Let's assume for now, we're talking with people like us that have the website up and running already. And I'll let somebody else ask the question from a development perspective if they haven't done it. But our website's up and running, Shulman Rogers' website's up and running. What's the best way to get involved with UserWay? And what can we give us a sense of what we can expect in terms of cost from, you mentioned a bunch of things, from just the widget, all the way through. It looks like there was a spectrum of tools. Give us a sense of, if you're already up and running and you want to go through this process, what makes the most sense and what to expect in terms of cost.
That's a great question. So as I've said a few times, UserWay will meet you where you are. So most people want a fast onboarding. So the fastest way to get into accessibility is through the widget. So you go to Solutions and you go to the widget. And you can onboard a widget for, I believe it's $490. We can just go to the pricing page. And then within minutes, your team adds it, and you are already benefiting from the choices that you give the people visiting your page. And then the robots work automatically under the hood to fix things.
Yeah, and that's $500.
I believe so. Let's check. So here's the price.
So that's super reasonable.
500
Yep.
bucks. Yeah, it's
seems like a very small price to pay for everything that we've just discussed. And not to like, be a try to sell UserWay. But for me, that's sort of my reaction as I was watching all this. It's like, oh, we have to do this. We have to do this. Of course we have to do this. But then of course, in the back of my mind is like, oh my God, do we have the resources to do this? So this is amazing. You have the resources to do this. You should have the resources at $500 a year.
That's well said. And it's money well spent, because now you're on the journey. You have it in mind. So many companies, as you've said, they just didn't think of it. And the time to start is now. And it's very important. And it's the law. So that is a very easy way to get going. Some other, depending on the entrepreneurs that you have here, but some of them might want to do the audit. If they're technical, if they are building things themselves, like they haven't yet actually deployed it, or they've deployed their first version. So the audit pricing is here. And the audit is more expensive because it actually looks at every single page and then gives you the list of what's wrong so that you can fix it.
Okay.
So actually, it's a little funny because the widget does it for you, and it's $400.
Right. Why? Right. So that was my question. Why would we not just do the widget?
Because the audit is more in depth. It's automation is very handy, but it can never do what a human does.
Got it. Okay.
And the coding is available online, but in my experience, most startups don't have they're not technical. So I think the simplest place to start is the widget. Okay.
And is that something like we would get our website developers involved with, or you don't even need to do that?
No, you do need somebody who knows enough, who has the login, if you're using WordPress. Doesn't have to be the lead developer, but somebody who knows enough of how to configure your website.
Got it. Okay, great. Well, we will be following up. I'll be following up with Jeremy. Shira, I see you're from UserWay. You're on here too. Would love to follow up with you on that. I know Next will at least take advantage of the widget, and I imagine Shulman Rogers will too. Any other questions for Lionel now that I'm already going to become a UserWay customer? Any other questions or concerns?
I do
Well,
like to turn back to the general story that we like to say the disabled is the one demographic that everyone is sure to join. You just have to live long enough.
very, very true. Indeed, that is always true. Well, I really, really appreciate you, Lionel and Shira and Jeremy and the whole UserWay team for being with us today. As I mentioned, we are going to broadcast this recording and share it with everybody who's registered and couldn't be here today, as well as within our platform, so that other people will have the opportunity to really learn from you, because it was incredibly, incredibly helpful. So thank you so much for being with us, and thank you everybody for joining. Please follow Next, powered by Shulman Rogers on LinkedIn. Check out our events page on next.law. We have these monthly partner webinars. We have monthly pitch workshops. We have a lot of free resources in Startup U, which is sort of our masterclass for entrepreneurs. So we have a whole bunch of free resources for entrepreneurs to access at any time. And thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to staying in touch with all of you. And Lionel, once again, thank you for a terrific presentation.
Thank you, Lisa. You're a great hostess.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.